The deafening crack of a rifle shot echoed through the cool Montana morning as Lily Evans ducked behind an overturned water trough, her heart hammering against her ribs. Blood from a fresh cut on her cheek mingled with tears as she pressed her back against the rough wood, praying the next bullet wouldn't find her. "You worthless whore!" Gerald Evans roared from the porch of their small ranch house. "Thought you could just walk out on me? After everything I've given you?" Lily's fingers trembled as she touched the bruises on her neck, his gifts from the night before. 3 years of marriage to a man who had shown his true nature only after the wedding bands were exchanged. 3 years of escalating violence that had finally reached its breaking point when he'd threatened to kill her as she slept. She'd waited until dawn, packed what little she could carry, and tried to slip away while he slumbered off his whiskey. But Gerald had stirred, seen her at the door, and reached for his Winchester. Another shot splintered the edge of the trough, sending wooden fragments flying. Lily flinched, knowing she couldn't stay. The next creek was a quarter-mile away, the nearest neighbor's ranch even farther. Her only chance was to make a run for it. "I'm counting to 3, Lily," Gerald shouted, his voice slurred from last night's drinking. 1. Lily gathered her skirts in her hands. 2. She took a deep breath, readying herself to sprint toward the tree line. 3. The distinct sound of horse hooves thundering up the path interrupted Gerald's countdown. Lily risked a peek around the edge of the trough, her eyes widening as she saw a stranger on horseback approaching, at speed a tall man in a dust-covered duster and well-worn Stetson. "What in tarnation is going on here?" The stranger's voice was deep and commanding as he pulled his bay stallion to a halt, positioning himself between Gerald and the water trough. Gerald lowered his rifle slightly, squinting up at the newcomer. "This ain't your business, stranger. Just having a disagreement with my wife." The rider dismounted in one fluid motion. "Most disagreements I know don't involve shooting at unarmed women." He turned slightly, catching sight of Lily's frightened face. His eyes, a startling green beneath the shadow of his hat, registered understanding immediately. "Name's Grant Xavier," he said, not to Gerald, but to Lily. "I'm passing through to River's Bend. Seems I arrived at an opportune moment." Gerald spit on the ground. "Get back on your horse, cowboy. What happens between a man and his wife ain't the concern of some drifter." Grant's hand hovered near his holstered Colt. "Madam, are you in danger?" Before Lily could answer, Gerald raised his rifle again. "She ain't going nowhere with you." In a flash, Grant drew his revolver and fired, the bullet striking Gerald's rifle and sending it flying from his hands. Gerald howled, clutching his stinging palms. "Madam," Grant said evenly, his gun still trained on Gerald, "if you're of a mind to leave, now would be the time." Lily hesitated only a second before scrambling to her feet, clutching her small bundle of belongings. "You run with him, and you're dead to me, you hear?" Gerald shouted, his face contorted with rage. "I'll hunt you both down like dogs." Grant backed toward his horse, his eyes never leaving Gerald. "Miss, can you ride?" Lily nodded, though her experience was limited. "Then up you go," he said, helping her onto the saddle before swinging up behind her. "Hold tight." With a kick to the stallion's flanks, they bolted down the path away from the ranch, leaving Gerald's curses fading in the distance. "He'll come after us," Lily said, her voice barely audible over the pounding hooves. Grant's arm tightened slightly around her waist as he guided the horse. "You're not running alone anymore, madam." They rode hard for nearly an hour, following narrow trails through pine forests and across shallow streams to cover their tracks. Lily clung to the saddle horn, every jolt sending pain through her bruised body. Finally, Grant slowed the horse as they entered a small clearing beside a creek. "We should water the horse and rest a spell," he said, sliding down before carefully helping Lily dismount. Her legs buckled beneath her, and he caught her by the elbows. "Easy now." Lily steadied herself, suddenly aware of how she must look hair wild, face bruised, clothes disheveled. She turned away in shame. "Thank you for your intervention, Mr. Xavier. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Grant led his horse to the creek. "I've seen enough in my time to recognize when someone's in peril." He filled his canteen and offered it to her. "How long has he been hurting you?" Lily took a small sip, the cool water soothing her parched throat. "Almost since we married in '73. It wasn't so bad at first, just harsh words, controlling ways. The hitting started about a year in." She touched her bruised cheek unconsciously. "Last night he put his hands around my neck and said next time he wouldn't stop." Grant's jaw tightened. No man has the right to treat a woman that way, wife or no. He removed his saddlebags and pulled out some jerky and hardtack. "You need to eat something. We've got a hard ride to Rivers Bend." "I can't go to Rivers Bend," Lily said quickly. "Gerald has friends there, men who'd tell him where to find me." Grant considered this. "I know a place. Old trading post about 20 miles north of here, run by a flathead woman named Talking Rain. She's helped women in your situation before." Lily accepted the jerky he offered. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I could bring nothing but trouble to you." Grant sat on a fallen log, pushing his hat back to reveal a face weathered by sun and wind, but handsome in a rugged way. A small scar cut through his left eyebrow, and his expression was serious but kind. "My sister was married to a man like your husband," he said simply. "I wasn't there when she needed me. I swore I'd never stand by again if I could help someone else." Something in his tone told Lily this wasn't the full story, but she didn't press. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Grant rose. "We should move on. Your husband will likely have sobered up enough to track us by now." As if summoned by his words, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached them. Grant's hand went to his gun as he scanned the forest edge. "He's not alone," he muttered, catching glimpses of multiple riders through the trees. "Looks like he rounded up some of those friends you mentioned." Lily's blood ran cold. "Gerald's brother works at the sawmill. They hunt together every season." Grant quickly doused their small camp, packing the saddlebags. "There's a mining settlement 2 days' ride from here, Silver Creek. My friend has a store there. If we can reach it, we'll find help." The riders were getting closer. Grant helped Lily onto his horse before mounting behind her. "We'll follow the creek a ways to mask our trail, then cut through the high country." They set off at a gallop, the cold water splashing as the horse navigated the shallow creek. Lily could hear shouting behind them, then the terrifying sound of a rifle shot. Grant urged the horse faster, ducking low over Lily's back. "Keep your head down," he instructed as they veered out of the creek and into a dense thicket of pines. For hours they pushed on, alternating between rapid pace and careful navigation through difficult terrain. Grant proved to be an expert horseman and tracker, finding hidden trails and obscure passages that would be difficult to follow. As dusk fell, they reached a rocky outcrop with a small cave partially hidden by overgrowth. "We'll rest here for the night," Grant decided, helping Lily down. Her entire body ached, unaccustomed to such prolonged riding. "They won't be able to track us in the dark, and we've laid enough false trails to keep them guessing come morning." While Grant tended to his horse, Lily gathered kindling for a small fire. Her hands were shaking, both from exhaustion and fear. "We can't risk a fire," Grant said gently, taking the sticks from her. "The light would be visible for miles in this terrain." Instead, he spread his bedroll near the cave entrance and offered her his coat. "It gets cold at night. Take this." Lily hesitated. "What about you?" "I've slept through worse." He settled himself against the cave wall, his revolver across his lap. "Try to get some rest, Mrs. Evans." "Lily," she corrected softly. "Please call me Lily." A faint smile touched his lips. "Lily, then. I'll keep watch. You're safe for now." Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Lily. She watched Grant in the dim moonlight that filtered into the cave, wondering about the man who had risked his life for a stranger. His face was alert even in repose, eyes scanning the darkness periodically. "You mentioned your sister," she said quietly. "What happened to her?" Grant was silent for so long Lily thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Charlotte married a rancher named Dawson when I was away driving cattle to Kansas. By the time I returned, he'd isolated her from everyone she knew. When I visited their ranch, I saw the bruises she tried to hide." His fingers tightened around his gun. "I offered to take her away, but she was afraid of what he'd do if she left. Said she'd come with me after she settled some affairs." He paused, taking a deep breath. 2 days later, their barn caught fire with her inside. Dawson claimed it was an accident that she'd knocked over a lantern, but a neighbor's boy said he'd heard them arguing before the fire started. "I'm so sorry," Lily whispered. "I tried to get the law involved, but Dawson had the sheriff in his pocket." A week later, Dawson was found dead, shot through the heart on his own property. Grant's eyes met hers in the darkness. They never found who did it. The unspoken confession hung in the air between them. Lily should have been frightened by the implication, but instead, she felt a strange sense of comfort knowing what kind of man Grant Xavier truly was, one who understood justice when the law failed. "You should sleep," he said, ending the conversation. "Dawn comes early, and we have a long journey ahead." This time, Lily managed to drift into an uneasy slumber, wrapped in Grant's coat that smelled of leather, tobacco, and pine. She woke to his hand gently shaking her shoulder. "We need to move," he whispered urgently. "They're closer than I expected." In the gray pre-dawn light, Lily could make out Grant's tense expression. They packed quickly and silently, listening to the distant sounds of men and horses moving through the forest below. "They must have picked up our trail yesterday evening," Grant muttered as he saddled his horse. "We'll head up through the pass. It's risky, but they won't expect us to take such difficult terrain." The path he chose was treacherous, a narrow trail that wound up the mountainside, with a sheer drop on one side. Lily clung to Grant's waist, trying not to look down as the horse carefully picked its way forward. They had nearly reached the summit when a shot rang out, the bullet striking rock inches from the horse's hooves. The startled animal reared, almost sending them over the edge before Grant regained control. Looking back, Lily saw Gerald and 3 other men on the trail below, rifles raised. "They're cutting us off!" Grant shouted, spurring the horse forward as more bullets whistled past. They crested the ridge and plunged down the other side, the horse sliding on loose shale. Behind them, their pursuers were forced to dismount and lead their horses up the steep incline, buying Grant and Lily precious minutes. At the bottom of the slope, they entered a dense forest that offered some cover. Grant pushed his exhausted horse as far as he dared before stopping beside a small stream. "He needs rest, or he'll founder," Grant said, quickly unsaddling the lathered animal. "We'll continue on foot for a while." Lily's legs were so sore she could barely walk, but fear drove her forward. Grant kept them moving at a steady pace, occasionally doubling back or creating false trails. By midday, the sounds of pursuit had faded, but Grant remained vigilant. "There's an old trapper's cabin not far from here," he said, pointing to a distant ridge. "If we're lucky, it'll still have some supplies." The abandoned cabin was little more than a shack, its roof partially collapsed, and the door hanging from a single hinge, but it offered shelter and a chance to rest. Inside, Grant found a few cans of beans and some coffee that the previous occupant had left behind. "It's not much, but it'll keep us going," he said, working to start a small fire in the damaged stone hearth. "We should be safe here for a few hours at least." Lily sank onto a rough-hewn bench, every muscle screaming in protest. "I never properly thanked you," she said. "You've risked everything for me." Grant shrugged as he set the beans to heat. "Any decent man would do the same." "No," Lily said firmly. "Most men would have ridden past, Most would say a husband has the right to discipline his wife, however he sees fit. Then most men are wrong, Grant replied, his green eyes intense. No one deserves to live in fear of the person who should protect them most. As they ate their meager meal, Lily found herself studying Grant's face. Despite his hard exterior, there was a gentleness to him that she hadn't experienced in a man before. Gerald had been charming when they'd courted, full of grand promises and sweet words, but his true nature had emerged once he'd secured her as his wife. Grant seemed to be the opposite, rough on the surface but kind at his core. "Tell me about Rivers Bend," she said, curious about the life he led. "Is that your home?" Grant smiled slightly. "No place has been home to me for long. I was born in Kentucky, raised in Missouri, and I've been drifting since the war ended. Worked as a ranch hand, sometimes a guard for stagecoaches. Rivers Bend is just where I was heading to meet an old Army friend who's offered me work at his freight company. And after that, will you move on again?" He considered this. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll find a reason to stay put for once." Something in his gaze made Lily's cheeks warm, and she looked away. It was foolish to feel anything but gratitude toward this man. She was still legally married, still in danger, still uncertain of her future. Grant checked his pocket watch. "We should rest while we can. I'll take first watch." But their respite was short-lived. Barely 2 hours later, the distant barking of dogs reached their ears. "Bloodhounds," Grant said grimly, gathering their few belongings. "Your husband's determined, I'll give him that." Lily's heart sank. "Gerald used to hunt runaway slaves before the war. He's always kept hounds." They slipped out the back of the cabin and into a ravine, where Grant led them downstream to confuse the dogs. The horse, somewhat recovered, carried them through increasingly difficult terrain as the afternoon waned. As twilight approached, they emerged from the forest into a vast meadow filled with wildflowers. In the distance, a plume of smoke rose from what appeared to be a small settlement. "Silver Creek," Grant said with evident relief. "We'll find help there." But as they crossed the meadow, a rifle shot split the air. Grant's body jerked, and Lily felt warm wetness seeping through his shirt. "Grant!" she cried as he swayed in the saddle. "Keep going," he grunted, one hand pressed to his side where blood flowed between his fingers. "Almost there." 4 riders emerged from the tree line behind them, Gerald in the lead. "Lily!" he shouted. "This ends now." Grant spurred the horse forward, but the animal was exhausted. They wouldn't outrun the fresh mounts behind them. Making a sudden decision, Grant pulled the horse to a stop and dismounted, helping Lily down. "Take him and ride for the town," he said, pressing the reins into her hands. "I'll hold them off." "No," Lily protested. "I won't leave you." Grant's face was pale from blood loss, but his expression was determined. "Lily, listen to me. This is your chance. Don't waste it." "I can't." "You can," he interrupted, his hand cupping her cheek briefly. "You're stronger than you know." He turned her toward the horse. "Now go." Before she could argue further, shots rang out as Gerald and his men closed in. Grant pushed Lily behind a large boulder and drew his revolver. "Last chance, Cowboy," Gerald shouted. "Give me back my wife, and maybe I'll let you crawl away instead of putting you in the ground." "She's not yours to claim," Grant called back, firing 2 precise shots that forced Gerald and his companions to take cover. Lily crouched behind the boulder, terror and desperation warring within her. She couldn't leave Grant to die for her. But she couldn't go back to Gerald either. Her gaze fell on Grant's saddlebags where he had dropped them. The butt of a second revolver peeked out from one of the compartments. While Grant exchanged fire with their pursuers, Lily silently retrieved the weapon. It was heavier than she expected, but not unfamiliar. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was young, before his passing had left her vulnerable to Gerald's courtship. "Grant," she whispered, "I can help." He glanced at her in surprise, then gave a short nod. Stay low. Wait for my signal. Then aim for the horses, not the men. We just need to drive them back long enough to reach town. The gunfight intensified, with bullets striking the boulder and kicking up dirt around them. Grant's shots were becoming less frequent as he tried to conserve ammunition. Lily could see blood soaking through his shirt, his face growing paler by the minute. When Grant gave the signal, Lily rose slightly and fired 2 quick shots toward the horses tethered behind Gerald's group. Her aim was true. One horse reared in panic, breaking free and galloping away. The others followed suit, leaving the men on foot. Good shot, Grant said with a pained smile. The distraction allowed them to mount Grant's horse together, with Lily taking the reins this time. They made for the town at the horse's fastest remaining gait, the sounds of cursing and sporadic gunfire fading behind them. Silver Creek turned out to be little more than a collection of wooden buildings surrounding a mining operation, but to Lily, it looked like salvation. People emerged from buildings as they rode in, drawn by the sounds of distant gunfire. We need a doctor, Lily called as Grant slumped against her, barely conscious. A gray-haired man stepped forward. I'm Doc Pearson. Bring him to my office. With the help of several townspeople, they got Grant into the doctor's small clinic. Lily paced outside while the doctor worked, explaining their situation to the town sheriff, a weathered man named Bishop who listened with growing concern. Gerald Evans has a reputation even this far north, Sheriff Bishop said. I'll gather some men and head out to intercept him and his friends. You'll be safe here for now, Mrs. Evans. True to his word, the sheriff organized a posse that rode out to meet Gerald's group before they could reach town. When they returned hours later, the sheriff informed Lily that her husband was in custody. He'll face charges for attempted murder, Bishop explained. The territorial judge arrives next week. Until then, Evans will be our guest at the jailhouse. Relief washed over Lily, though she knew the danger wasn't entirely past. Gerald had friends and family who might seek revenge, but for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. Doc Pearson emerged from the examination room, wiping his hands on a cloth. Your friend lost a good amount of blood, but the bullet passed clean through his side without hitting anything vital. With rest and care, he should recover fully. May I see him? Lily asked. The doctor nodded. He's been asking for you. Just don't tire him out. Grant was propped up on the examination table, his torso wrapped in white bandages. His face brightened when Lily entered, though pain lines still creased his forehead. The sheriff caught Gerald, she told him, taking a seat beside the table. They're holding him for the territorial judge. Grant nodded. Good. But that doesn't solve everything. The law's reach is limited out here, and divorce isn't easy to come by. I know, Lily said softly, but for now, we're safe. Thanks to you. His hand found hers, calloused fingers entwining with her smaller ones. Thanks to us. You're quite a shot, Lily Evans. She smiled. My father raised me to take care of myself. I forgot that for a while with Gerald. You won't forget again, Grant said with certainty. The doctor arranged for Grant to stay in a room above the general store while he recovered. Lily took a position as an assistant to the storekeeper's wife, earning enough to pay for her board at the town's small boarding house. Each day she would visit Grant, bringing him meals and news from around town. During those quiet visits, their connection deepened. Grant told her stories of his travels, of the beauty he'd seen across the Western Territories. Lily shared memories of her childhood in Ohio, of her dreams to someday have a small homestead where she could grow a garden and raise children who would never know fear in their own home. 2 weeks passed, and Grant's wound healed steadily. The territorial judge arrived, heard the case against Gerald, and sentenced him to 3 years in the territorial prison for attempted murder and assault. It wasn't the justice Lily had hoped for. Gerald would eventually be free, but it bought her time. The night before the prison wagon was to transport Gerald away, Lily visited Grant in his room above the store. He was sitting up in bed, reviewing some papers the sheriff had brought him. "What are those?" she asked, setting down the basket of dinner she'd brought. Grant handed her the papers. "Sheriff Bishop helped me file these. Divorce papers on grounds of cruelty and attempted murder. It won't be easy, but with the criminal conviction, you have a strong case. Bishop says the judge will likely grant it before he leaves town." Lily stared at the documents, tears welling in her eyes. "I never thought I'd be free of him." "You deserve a chance at happiness, Lily," Grant said softly. She looked up at him, suddenly aware of how much her feelings for this man had grown. "What happens after? When you're healed and I'm free?" Grant's green eyes held hers steadily. "That depends on you. My friend in Rivers Bend still has that job waiting. It's good land there, fertile soil for gardens. Plenty of room for children to run free." Hope bloomed in Lily's chest. "Are you asking me to come with you?" "I'm asking for a chance to court you properly," Grant said, taking her hand. "No rushed decisions, no pressure. Just time to see if what I feel for you is something you might come to feel for me too." "And what do you feel?" she whispered. "That I've been wandering my whole life and somehow found home the moment I saw you." Lily's heart swelled. After years of Gerald's false words and broken promises, Grant's simple honesty touched her deeply. "I think I'd like to see Rivers Bend." The judge granted Lily's divorce the following day, citing Gerald's unconscionable cruelty as grounds. As Gerald was led away to begin his prison sentence, he spat curses and threats, but for the first time, his words held no power over Lily. By the time spring turned to summer, Grant had recovered enough to travel. The people of Silver Creek gathered to bid them farewell as they prepared to leave for Rivers Bend. Doc Pearson gave them a package of medical supplies, the storekeeper offered a wagon loaded with provisions, and Sheriff Bishop presented Lily with a small derringer. "Just in case," the sheriff said with a wink. Their journey to Rivers Bend took 10 days, during which Lily discovered new strength in herself and a deepening affection for the quiet, principled man who rode beside her. Grant never pushed, never presumed, but his steadfast presence and gentle consideration spoke volumes. Rivers Bend proved to be everything Grant had described: a growing town nestled in a fertile valley, with mountains rising in the distance. Grant's friend Luke welcomed them warmly, offering Grant the promised job managing shipments and providing a small cabin on his property where Lily could stay. "It's not much," Grant said as he showed her the cabin, "but with some work, it could be comfortable." Lily walked through the simple two-room structure, noting the solid walls, the small stone fireplace, the windows that let in streams of sunlight. Outside, a patch of level ground would make a perfect garden. "It's perfect," she said, turning to him with shining eyes. Over the summer months, Grant courted Lily with a patience and tenderness she had never known. They worked side by side to improve the cabin, planting a garden and adding a small porch where they would sit in the evenings, watching the sunset. Grant never raised his voice, never made demands, never tried to control her comings and goings. Instead, he encouraged her friendships with the town's women, celebrated her successes in the garden, and listened when she spoke. On a crisp autumn evening, as they sat on their porch watching golden leaves drift from the trees, Grant took Lily's hand. "I want to ask you something," he said, his usually confident voice tinged with nervousness. "But I need you to know you can say no without fear or consequence." Lily turned to him, her heart racing. "What is it?" Grant knelt before her, a small ring of braided gold in his palm. "Lily Evans, these past months have been the happiest of my life. I love you more than I thought possible, and if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my days proving that love. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks as she looked at this man who had saved her in more ways than one, not just from Gerald's rifle, but from a life of fear and submission. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Grant Xavier, I will marry you." Their wedding was a simple affair held in Rivers Bend's small church. Lily wore a dress of pale blue with wildflowers in her hair. Grant stood tall in a new suit, his green eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. "I promise to cherish your strength and independence," he said when it came time for his personal vows. "To stand beside you, not above you. To be your partner in all things, and to remind you every day that you are never alone." Lily's voice trembled with emotion as she responded, "I promise to trust in the goodness I've found in you. To build our home on honesty and respect. To face whatever comes our way together, and to never forget the courage it took to begin again." As winter blanketed Rivers Bend in snow, Lily and Grant settled into their life together. The cabin grew warm with love and laughter. When spring arrived, bringing new growth to Lily's expanding garden, it also brought news of a child to come a new life that would know only gentleness and respect from its father. On summer evenings, Grant would sit on their porch with his arm around his wife, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant colors. Sometimes, Lily would think back to that terrifying morning when she'd run from Gerald's rifle, how close she had come to death or a life of continued abuse. How a stranger on horseback had changed everything with 7 simple words. "You're not running alone anymore, madam." But she wasn't running now. She was home.